Most businesses now use AI. Very few use it well. While over 70% of organizations report adopting AI, most research shows fewer than 20% see meaningful organization-wide impact. The winners turn AI from a tool into a way of working.
Okay, so on our panel, let me introduce you to them. We have Andrew Grill, futurist speaker and best-selling author of Digitally Curious. We have David Birss, co-founder of the Gen AI Academy. Kunal Kaul, managing director, small and medium businesses, Cisco EMEA. Joe Seddon, founder and CEO of the Zero Gravity. And Julie Holmes, AI strategist and keynote speaker, founder of Rivet Labs. So thank you all for being here. Now, before we dive in, you know this is about you more than anything else or anybody else. So please, please, please keep your questions coming. And we also have a QR code. Some of you may have noticed. The question is, do you feel your business is keeping pace with competitors when it comes to AI adoption? A simple yes or no vote. It'll be interesting to see at the end of this panel where we've landed. If you're at home and watching live stream, keep those questions coming in through the screen. Here in this room with us, we have a roaming mic, and I will be handing the floor over to you, but I thought I'd just get things started. So here goes. We know businesses are experimenting with AI, but so few seem to really be getting those real measurable impacts and results. Why? And I'm going to come to you first on that, Andrew, please.
Well, thanks, Artie. I come from a small business family, and I'm a small business myself, so I understand the pressures you face. Quick show of hands, who here uses Sage or Xero for financial accounting? Okay, keep your hand up if you know that they already have AI capabilities built in. A few of you. So there are some quick wins. The tools you're using today already have AI built in. In fact, most of the tools, most of the SaaS tools that are out there have to have AI to keep up, but they have it. So you can turn them on, sometimes for free, and ask the question, who's my worst debtor this month? And rather than running a report, it'll tell you like a ChatGPT. So for many of the small businesses I talk to, they don't know that the tools they currently own are already AI enabled. So for those of you who didn't have your hand up when you go home, either try the tool in the settings or ask your representative from Sage or Xero, how do I turn on the AI features? That could be a really quick win that they can put into play today.
Dave, I want to ask you the same question. You know, Gen AI, you've got more than 1 million learners. What are you gauging from that?
Well, one of the things that we're finding is that so many companies around the world are focusing on thinking that AI is all about productivity. They've been told this lie, to be honest, by the tech companies, that it's all about you can do things faster and cheaper. And that's what everyone's aiming for, but it's not what AI is good at. AI is good at amplifying human ability. And what we're working with is trying to get people to understand not just the skills that, what software you use and what buttons you press, but the skills that can be amplified by AI. And we spend a lot of our time teaching the skills that are more relevant in the age of AI, because everyone now, whatever stage you're at, you're a manager. If you're working with an AI, you are a manager, even if you're an intern that started this morning.
Julie, if I could bring you in, you know, given your background, you work with a lot of businesses, you work around the culture as well. So, you know, Dave's talking about amplifying that human ability, but what role does culture play within that in a business?
Yeah, I think there's two main issues that come up and permeate culture when it comes to AI adoption in particular and being able to benefit from that. And those two things are around the leadership and around time. So if we take time, for example, I would imagine many of you are being encouraged or are encouraging yourselves to invest in AI and to learn more about it. How many of you have blocked time on your calendar to do that? A few people. How many of you have given your teams time to do that with their AI? A few, very few, actually. In fact, I think I see maybe 2 hands come up for that. So it's that we are telling people they need to use AI, but at the same time, we're not necessarily blocking off or protecting an opportunity for them to learn that skill and to invest in it and to develop the soft skills that go with it. And I think the other piece is about leadership. We have a lot of leaders right now who are saying AI is important, we need to do this, go forth and conquer, and they're not doing it themselves. Right? So they're not leading by example, they're leading by proclamation.
Would you say then that the AI failure is down to leadership, or is it more technology? Is it a technology problem?
I don't think it's a technology problem per se. Technology is just a tool. Do we blame the hammer? I think it's more about being able to effectively recognize what it takes to leverage AI effectively. Right? So, to the points that we've already heard, it isn't about, like what buttons do I click? It's how do I re-engineer my processes? How do I rethink my business through an AI lens? So the technology is there, but it's like electricity. How do you deploy it? It can do a lot of things. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to take advantage of it?
Kunal, if I could bring you in, because I know you work at the infrastructure, at the very basic level, building up in a business. What is your take on this? Do you think it is much more around the leadership in a business? And don't forget, we are looking at an SME market here. Or do you think it is actually the technology? Are you finding actually, no, it's the technology, and people have done so many plug and plays and bolt-ons?
Well, Aarti, if you look at the market today, the foundational models are pretty much the same. The vendors that customers work with are pretty much the same. The infrastructure elements in a lot of ways are getting commoditized. So the difference or the differentiator is the human system around it. And that, I think, for me, boils down to leadership and culture. And maybe I can talk about a couple of examples to add to what Julie said in terms of where leadership makes a difference. Now, when you're running an AI pilot or developing an AI model, it is an iterative process. And that means that organizations need to have the ability to accept failure, and that comes from leadership. If failure is not accepted, iterations don't happen. If iterations don't happen, AI models don't succeed. Secondly, I think a lot of organizations, even small and mid-sized organizations, have got silos, which means that the data is siloed, which means when we use that data, if the leadership is not open enough to share the data, the output is going to be siloed, the intelligence is going to be siloed, and we will not achieve the desired outcomes. So I think these are just a couple of examples of where leadership and culture plays a very, very important role in defining the outcome or the success of an AI project.
So let's say I was running an SME business of between 50 and 150 people. What is the first serious shift that I would be looking to make in my business?
I think fundamentally, in my opinion, we have to look at AI for things like cost savings, headcount reduction. That's the first thing that comes to your mind. And that pretty much funds the initial part of the project. But I think if we are settling for cost savings and headcount reduction, I think we are playing defense. Yeah. We have to start looking at AI to start imagining, envisioning, conceiving things that initially were considered to be impossible. Whether it's product and services, whether it's personalization, whether it's predictive support, whether it's developing new products. The cost of developing new products has the whole spectrum has changed. I think those are the kind of things where when we start looking at AI as a growth accelerator, as a competitive differentiator, as a means of disrupting the market that you operate in, that's when I think it becomes a true game changer.
Andrew, I know you work with a lot of businesses.
Yeah, let's address the elephant in the room. Everyone says, "Oh, is AI going to take my job?" I want you all to imagine that your job is a series of tasks. I want you to slice those tasks into things that you like doing and don't like doing. I said this to a group of hairdressers a couple of weeks ago. Focus on what you love and automate the rest. So to what we've talked about today, think about those task slice, things that you could automate. Focus on those first because they're easy. And keep the things that you really love. Then jobs don't go away. It means that tasks are redistributed. When you think about it like that, you then go, oh, here are 4 or 5 things I'll put to one side, and here are things I'll focus on. That's where to get started, rather than which model do I use or do I do my processes. Think about how you get work done today and what you can automate.
We've heard that word cost, and we all know how important commercials are in any business. So, many SMEs start with cost cutting. What does AI move? When does AI move? Actually, not what, but when does AI move from cost cutting to saving money and to actually driving growth? At what stage does that happen? Joe, do you want to come in? Joe is the tech entrepreneur with the most incredible backstory. He started his business in his bedroom. Is now VC backed. It's grown. It does incredible things with creating a level playing field for those people coming from disadvantaged backgrounds. So.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is I think AI completely changes the economic viability of solving certain types of problems. Like with any technological revolution, it's easy to get cynical in the short term because to sort of use the Peter Thiel quote about the internet, we were promised flying cars and all we got was 180 characters. And I think AI is the same in many ways. It can do cool things, but we're not yet in a position where we're able to automate huge batches of work. But I think people often underestimate in the long term just how much the expanse of what human beings can actually achieve changes as a result of technology changing the economic viability of certain things. So I've built a tech-based business over the past 7 years that has various different applications. And there were certain problems that we just couldn't solve because they were just way too complex for a business that runs on a cost base of a couple of £1 million per year. That is now starting to change. A business like mine can now potentially solve problems which 3 or 4 years ago you'd maybe need to spend 20, 30, 40 million pounds a year to solve. So I'd be sort of encouraging everyone in this audience to reflect on those problems that were too hard, too non-viable to solve before, and look at, is there a way that AI can actually make those problems viable? And the second thing I'd add as well is, I know a big discussion point for SMEs is the debate between should you be a bootstrapped business, cash flow positive, or should you be VC-backed, raise investment, but potentially inject more risk and jeopardy into what you're doing. I think the great thing about AI is that trade-off between being bootstrapped and being VC-backed, I think has now completely changed. It's much easier for a bootstrapped business to come up with a new business model that can potentially create that 100x return than it was in the pre-AI era. And sort of conversely as well, if you're a VC-backed business, you raise investment and it doesn't work, now you can actually afford to cut your operations and make them more leaner without destroying your business in a way that just wasn't possible 4 years ago. A lot of VC-backed businesses, if it didn't go on that 100x growth trajectory, were toast and would become insolvent. Now it's possible to change course far easier than before, and I think that creates a lot of flexibility for SMEs who often, I imagine a lot of the founders in the room will be wrestling that question when they go to bed at night of, do I accept external investment in my business and take that risk in what I'm doing?
What's your take on it, Julie?
Well, I think if we look specifically at this question of cost savings versus revenue generation, it's a really, we'd love to have two separate lines on a P&L, but in reality, there's a pretty fine line between them, and there's a lot of bleed that happens between them. I do a lot of work with sales teams, particularly SMEs, and one of the things that comes up again and again is, do you know what, if you can be more effective with sales, so why aren't they more effective today or in the past? Because it took too long. It took too long to personalize every message. It took too long to fully research a prospect. It took too long to make sure that you were following with everybody in the right place in the right time. Now, with AI supporting that, yes, it's saving them time and enabling them to deliver better messages, better connection. So yes, it's productivity, it's cost savings, but at the same time, it's also generating revenue, right? Because it's going to drive more sales, better client relationships, better partnership opportunities, better understanding of their market. All of that will come together. So I don't think it's an either or, it's a both simultaneously if you play your cards right.
Can I add to that, Arti?
Go for it.
I think when we talk about the cost of doing something in the world that we live in today, it's not just about the cost of doing something, it's also the cost of not doing something. AI has compounding value, and that compounding is happening at a pace that at least I have never experienced in my lifetime. And I think that's where the disruption is happening. It's not just about what you want to do today. I think where you are today, the markets could potentially get radically disrupted 12 to 18 months from now. And so every month that you miss out is a month that you have gifted to your competitor to get to a point where it might be impossible to catch up with them. So it's a very different dimension.
Given that AI can sometimes feel for an SME, SMB that, we're on quicksand, right? It's moving all the time. It's moving fast. We're like grappling sometimes. And any SME will tell you that there are so many other things that also require priority. If the budget is limited, where should the business invest first? Would it be tools, training, governance, infrastructure, people? Start with you, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I would say don't get caught in the hype bandwagon. There is a lot of this. It's very easy in AI to get caught in the hype bandwagon. There's a new model that's come out. It's better than that. And now it's better. That's better. It just is never ending and it's exhausting. Don't get caught in that. It is about humans. And it's about making sure that they have the skills that are going to be right. So I would say training is more important. And I would say this based on, we can see that last year lots of stuff came out. So you could see there's a stat there saying that 20% of companies have not been seeing benefits from this. There's actually a McKinsey study that says that only 6% of companies have seen any kind of financial success out of AI. So it's broken. It's not working. So we need something different. And there's another stat I can give you, which is the expenditure. 93% of the expenditure is going in technology, 7% in people. And if you want to know why things are effing up, I think it is that right there. Because we're finding that there's another stat, I can give you more here. There's one that says that 80% of the problems with AI adoption are not technical. They are to do with people and processes. That's what it's about, and that's where the attention needs to be. Look at your people, look at their skills, make sure they're the best they can possibly be. Then we're going to look at our processes. And we're going to look at how we can get AI involved in that. And make a promise to yourself, like Andrew's saying, you're not going to give the good shit away. The stuff that gives you that boost, that makes you do a little fist pump, do not give that stuff away, or your job will suck. And you don't want that.
Thank you. I'm seeing Andrew nod in agreement here. Kunal, what's your take on it?
When it comes to people and AI and this whole debate about skilling and upskilling and what kind of talent, are we going to require as things change, one of the things that I think we have to be mindful of is we have to be very careful that we don't hyphenate AI tool proficiency with AI fluency. For me, AI fluency is about learning how to live with AI. You don't necessarily have to be an expert at a whole bunch of AI tools that are available out there, but you need to know what is the impact that makes. You need to know when to question the output. You need to know what is the logic and the reasoning behind how this AI tool is functioning. And that is something that I think leaders have to be very conscious that spans across everybody in the organization. It is not just for knowledge workers, but the entire spectrum, because you could very easily create an organization where there are two tiers. There's an AI-capable workforce, and then there's the rest. And that, I think, is a very critical business risk which organizations need to avoid. So for me, I think it's about talent, but it's also about understanding the importance of AI fluency and not just knowing how to use the tools. And that makes a lot of difference.
I want to open it up to the floor. If you've got a question, please put your hand up. We've got a roving mic. So I know you'll all be desperate to ask your questions. Please put your hands up. I'm coming to you in a moment. Yes, can we get a mic there, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you tell me what your question is and who you want to direct it to, please?
It's open for anyone.
Thank you.
The question is, who's faster at implementing AI, larger companies or smaller companies?
Okay, I think you've all got experience here of working with several SME businesses. Andrew, do you want to...
The biggest opportunity is in the room. You all small and medium businesses don't have the legacy that big companies have. I spend my life in companies, and the reason they bring a guy like me in and pay me to speak in front of them is because they don't know what they're doing. Everything we've said, I can sum up about literacy in 2 words, and I'm going to give you a plug here. I wrote a book called Digitally Curious. But think about that as a mindset. If you are digitally curious, if you understand it, and SMEs have the biggest opportunity because you can be digitally curious today. Big organizations, trust me, take so much longer because they are regulated, they have process, they have people who don't want to change. So actually, when I go around the world, SMEs, you have the most amazing opportunity. Grab it today.
I think, Joe, you picked up on that point as well. You made that point, didn't you, about smaller businesses and how quickly and agile they can be.
Yeah, I think we're moving into the era of startups. I think people take for granted that the structure of the economy that we've got today is the one which inherently is always going to be the structure in the future. Like having these sort of monolithic companies across different sectors, whether it's technology, whether it's law, like this is a kind of post-industrial solution, economic structure. It doesn't have to be that way. The future we may move into is where actually we have lots of startups dominating the entire economy and sort of having companies of hundreds of thousands of people that are dominating sectors in a monopolistic way might be seen as a thing of the past. So I think this really is the era of startups. But in order to sort of grab that change, you've got to create a kind of institutional risk tolerance for experimenting with AI and accepting that things may go wrong. And that's where startups and SMEs have an advantage, because naturally you can have a higher risk tolerance when you're in an unregulated sector, but also a much smaller business with a quicker feedback loop to correct things when things do go wrong. So now is the time to turn that risk tolerance into a true advantage that can enable you to finally go head to head with some of the big boys.
Love that.
I'd love to add something to
Yes.
that, if I may. Just to give everybody something practical to take away, one of the things that I do with a lot of teams is we do a process called show and fail. So if you're familiar with the phrase show and tell, now we say show and fail. So what have you tried with AI this week? You bring that into your team. Every week it's show and fail. But it's not meant to be about showcasing failures, but to showcase experimentation. And with experimentation does come some moments of failure. But by recognizing those, having leaders that are actually demonstrating, hey, I tried this, it didn't go very well, we're working on this, it didn't work, this did work, why did that work for you but not for me? Use tools within your teams, and I don't mean tools as in physical tools, but use the tools of communication, of strategy, of design, of collaboration. Use those to enhance everything that you're doing with AI.
I mean, that really does call for psychological safety and having that, creating that culture and that space where people feel comfortable. But I love that show and fail. Okay, who else has a question here? Oh, lots and lots of people. I want to get to as many of you as possible. Can I ask you to keep your questions as tight as possible? Yes, we've got one at the back. So we'll take this gentleman at the front here, please, and then we'll come over there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. My question is for Joe and Kunal. You talked about using AI to solve some complicated innovations. My concern is the security part of it and the losing the IP. Who owns the IP and how do you protect it until it gets to the market? Thank you.
Okay.
I think that's a great question. And I'll add to that, it's not just security, but it's also understanding what your data means for you.
Yep.
I think SMEs overestimate the amount of data that is needed to make an AI project successful, but underestimate the importance of quality of data and where that comes from and governance around it. So I think that's critically important, but cybersecurity or security has to be embedded natively into every element of an AI framework or an AI model. It cannot be layered on top of it. It cannot be bolted on. You can end up creating an AI project where the output might result in a compliance violation or a regulatory sort of misalignment. So one has to be very careful about those things, but security has to be deeply embedded, whether it's the network, whether it's the application, whether it's the devices. If you're running a factory, if it's your OT side of the house, it has to be a pervasive and a comprehensive part of every single element. And I think ideally it should be managed through a platform and not through bits and pieces of sort of looking at things from a disintegrated lens.
Okay, I want to take a question from the gentleman at the back there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kevin Love Hughes from Moneypenny were one of the sponsors today. I was interested to know how many people in the room use conversational AI on their phone lines to answer calls, to filter that kind of the wheat from the chaff, as it was. The sales calls go to a person, and you got your people there, and then the sales calls that are trying to sell you something, they come to you and then we get rid of them for you. So I just wondered if anybody uses that kind of technology at the moment.
Anybody use
I spoke to a company who had it embedded in a thing called x88. And I asked them, are you going to use it? And they're a family-run business with 5 generations. Their resistance was, at the moment, if the phone rings, anyone picks it up. And I said, what a waste of resource. Why don't you start this every third call? try it and see what the customer experience is, so not picking up every call. So I think that people are hesitant, I've seen in SMEs, to start using this because it takes away the human touch. But if the command is you stop what you're doing and answer the phone call, and you're in the middle of a reconciliation, so it's got to be in a way that feels like it's invisible rather than it's mandated, I think.
Great, thank you.
May I add something to that?
Go.
So a great question that I always love to ask people is, would you rather talk to a human or a bot? And everybody goes, human. Human, right?
Yeah.
Right? So you want to go back to calling your bank and having to be on hold? You want to have to call in and talk to somebody to book a hotel reservation? You want to go back to, having to call in to make a change to your airline ticket? Well, no, not that. Right? There's a line, right? There's a gauge that you can think about in terms of that human, right? What we consider mechanical versus meaningful. Know when the meaningful moments are in a customer's journey, so that you know when there are mechanical moments that you can automate and filter and process so that you're getting the best of everything.
Can I add to that? The worst job I ever had was on the complaints line for Sky Television.
Oh.
Could you imagine people on a Saturday afternoon when the football isn't coming on, screaming at you down the phone? I was nothing more than a paper robot. I had a folder in front of me. I didn't even have Sky Television, no idea how it worked. And it'd be like, what's your problem? And I'd be looking down the menu and going, all right, that's page 67. And I'd take them through that process. If I couldn't get it by fixing it with paper, then it was passed on to somebody else who had a different folder. Right, that sucked. That sucked really badly. It's not about whether it's a human or whether it's a bot. It's about whether you can solve the frickin' problem and give a really good customer experience. I saw something the other day from 11 Labs, who had created a bot that did this for airlines. So you had just missed an airline flight. Now, what that bot did that was amazing, it's not the fact that it sounded human, it's not the fact it was technology instead of a person, it was the fact that it fixed the problem and made the person feel good about it. So don't think that it's either human or technology, because that's not the way anyone sees it. Think of yourself as a consumer and what you're wanting out of the interaction, and then make your decision.
I think, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but those are such wise words to end this panel discussion on. So AI, ultimately, whether it's people, whether it's AI, we want the problem fixed. We want the solution. So on that note, we've got the vote in. It's very, very tight. Look at that. I mean, anyone would almost think about Brexit, dare I say it. Do you feel your business is keeping pace with competitors when it comes to AI adoption? Yes, 51%, no, 49%. I'm so sorry, because do you know what? We could have spoken for so much longer, but our time is up. Thank you to you, and thank you especially to my brilliant panel, Andrew, Dave, Kunal, Joe, and Julie. Thank you.